Sikho, a young man of great wealth and noble lineage, possessed all that could be desired for a life of contentment. Yet, fate had bestowed upon him not only material prosperity but also a striking countenance, a keen intellect, and a natural talent. Within the confines of Nanking, there was no youth who could rival him in these aspects. Whether it was in scholarly pursuits or the pursuit of beauty, all were inevitably outmatched by his brilliance. Thus, the courtesans of the city yearned for even a fleeting glimpse of this handsome prince. Upon reaching maturity, Sikho swiftly embraced the extravagant pleasures of the world, indulging in wine, women, and the opulent lifestyle. He was said to have snatched the fragrance and beauty of women, and by the age of 23, he had exhausted every conceivable delight. Yet this satiation brought with it a profound indifference. No longer finding joy in worldly pursuits, he retreated to his estate, where he watched the monotonous days slip by. His companions would often urge him to join them in the city's festivities, but Sikho would merely dismiss their invitations with a disdainful laugh. He acknowledged that his youthful vigor remained, but he found their suggestions mundane.
I am not yet weary of life's pleasures, but your proposals lack novelty. The women and wine of this city have grown stale. If you truly have something extraordinary to offer, then I am willing to accompany you.
To Sikho, the lives of his companions, who spent their days in the company of common women, seemed trivial. He yearned for a woman of exceptional beauty and intelligence, and a pursuit that would truly challenge his spirit. His heart yearned for such experiences, but he found no avenue to fulfill his desires. Though his wealth was boundless, his youth was fleeting. He would often ponder this, his heart aching for excitement and fulfillment. He could no longer remain idle, driven by a desire to rediscover the passions of his earlier years. Yet he found himself at a loss, unable to find anything that could truly ignite his spirit. He had explored every conceivable pleasure, and the world offered him no new challenges. Out of sheer desperation, the prince ordered all the rare wines from his cellar to be brought out. He also had 7 of the most beautiful women from across the empire selected and brought to his palace. He installed them as his companions, assigning each her own quarters. To accompany the wine, he commanded that all the various vintages from different regions be poured into goblets. In this way, every renowned drink from the 400 provinces of the empire was available from morning to night, served alongside a variety of exquisite dishes. Yet, the prince found no new pleasure in these tastes. He had grown accustomed to such luxuries and found them ordinary. While the wine intoxicated him and brought a sense of euphoria, he still felt a void, a longing for a sensation as sublime as riding on the winds of the gods. His 7 companions would often wonder among themselves, "Why is our Lord so gloomy and listless these days?" Each woman employed all her charms and skills to please the prince. They vied for his attention, but he showed little interest in any of them. To the common eye, they were undeniably beautiful, but to the arrogant prince, they were no different from the wines, lacking anything truly extraordinary. Thus, the prince relentlessly pursued the ultimate pleasure, but neither wine nor women could satisfy him. He would demand of the merchants who visited his palace, "No matter how much you pay, can't you find me a rarer wine? Can't you find me a more beautiful woman?" The merchants who came to his palace were unable to provide him with anything grand enough to meet his demands. Many had heard of the prince's peculiar tastes and came from distant lands bearing strange and exotic gifts. One merchant said, "Your Highness, I've personally found this in the cellar of a very old shop in Xi'an. It's a 1,000-year-old wine. They say Empress Zhang of the Tang dynasty was fond of this swallow brain wine. And this one, they say, is dragon's fat wine from the same ancient Tang period. If you think I'm lying, please examine the seal on the jar. It's 1,000 years old, as you can see." The prince would remain silent, his expression mocking, until the merchant finished speaking. Then he would say scornfully, "Your eloquence is impressive, but you need to know more if you want to deceive me. That jar is called Nanding and it's from the Southern Song Dynasty. There was no such thing before that. A famous Tang Dynasty wine in a Song Dynasty jar? That's ridiculous." Whenever the merchant heard these words, a cold sweat would break out on his forehead. Without saying a word, he would turn and leave. The prince's knowledge was not limited to pottery. His artistic understanding of clothing, gemstones, and painting was so profound that even if all the archaeologists and experts in the world were gathered together, they would not come close to matching his expertise. Those who came to sell him women had worn out the threshold of his palace, each one exaggerating the qualities of their merchandise. "Your Highness, this time I have found a truly extraordinary jewel for you. She is the daughter of a merchant family from Hangzhou province. Her name is Spring Beauty. She is 16 and not yet fully grown, but she has an unparalleled talent for art and poetry. There is no one like her in all 400 provinces. If you think I'm deceiving you, please see for yourself." Despite having been deceived and disappointed before, the prince would still succumb to curiosity and want to see the girl. Most of the time he would simply say, "Very well, I want to see her as soon as possible. You may call her." However, the beautiful girls that the slave traders brought to the prince's palace, except for those who were naturally bold, would flee from his palace, ashamed and humiliated with tearful eyes. The prince would look at them and say, "So, this is the beauty who has no equal in all 400 provinces? If that's the case, then all 400 provinces are insignificant compared to the beautiful women in my inner chambers. You, as a slave trader, should take a look at my companions and learn a lesson for the future." Summer had ended, followed by autumn. The 10th month festivities and the sacred holiday had passed, yet the melancholy and apathy that consumed the prince persisted. He had placed such high hopes on his youth, but now he was about to turn 25, and the mere thought made him feel as if his hair had lost its luster. As he sank deeper into depression, his restlessness and thirst for pleasure grew more intense, gnawing at him like a parasite. Finally, the new year arrived and spring came with it. During this time, the benevolence and wisdom of the great emperors of the Qing dynasty enveloped the entire empire of China. People in all 18 provinces benefited from the kindness of their rulers, and peace and prosperity prevailed. Every year during these nights, lanterns were hung on the doors of government buildings and noble houses, and silk ribbons were draped from the upper floors, adorning the mansions with colorful lights and ushering in a time of celebration and revelry. But even in the midst of this festive atmosphere, the prince remained as gloomy as ever, showing no sign of joy. A few days after the Lantern Festival began, as the sun was setting, the prince was reclining on a cushion on a south-facing balcony that offered a magnificent view. As usual, he was lost in his silver pipe, smoking opium. The street was so crowded and noisy that it was as if the sounds were right beside his ear. Hundreds and thousands of lit lanterns floated in the silvery mist of the evening sky, shimmering like scales on the surface of a pond. At that moment, the prince's gaze fixed on a strange figure, and he followed him with interest and curiosity for a long time. The man wore a velvet hat, a red woolen cloak over his shoulders, and black leather boots. He was accompanied by a donkey that pulled a small cart. The man's hat, cloak, and boots were worn and torn in places, suggesting long and arduous journeys. Every now and then, he would stop to catch his breath and observe the crowd. At first, it seemed as if he were a traveling performer, but as he got closer to the prince's palace, The peculiar way he handled his donkey suggested something else entirely. Not only his clothes but also the color of his skin, hair, and eyes were completely different from those of ordinary people. The prince thought to himself, "He must be one of those Westerners, probably a Dutchman from one of those South Sea islands." Pointing to the cart attached to the donkey, the stranger said in a voice that he tried to make loud, "In this cart, I have brought with me a creature infinitely rare, one that lives in the depths of the sea. I have heard of your fame and have captured a mermaid alive from the warm waters of distant seas and brought her here." When the prince heard the word mermaid from the mouth of a Westerner with a strange accent, his heart pounded with excitement. Needless to say, he had never seen a mermaid up close before. But now, hearing the word mermaid, pronounced with a kind of guttural sound, from a traveler who had come from the South Seas made the matter even more mysterious. The prince hurriedly told his adolescent attendants who were standing nearby, Hey, quickly, someone go down and bring the red-haired stranger who is standing there inside the palace." Upon seeing the prince, the stranger knelt again, paying his respects in the Chinese manner, and then spoke in his peculiar accent. "I caught this mermaid near a coral reef in Holland, several hundred miles from the port of Canton. One day, while I was out pearl diving, I unexpectedly caught a beautiful mermaid, far more valuable than any pearl. A person cannot fall in love with a pearl, whereas anyone who sees a mermaid once cannot help but fall in love with her. A pearl only has a cold splendor and brilliance, but a mermaid, in her enchanting and captivating skin, has hot tears, a warm heart, and mysterious knowledge. A mermaid's tears are infinitely clearer than pearls. A mermaid's heart is 1,000 times redder than coral. A mermaid's knowledge is more mysterious than the magic of Indian sorcerers. But despite having knowledge that is beyond human comprehension, the mermaid is condemned to a position below humans, among the fish, due to the demonic immortality she possesses. This is why, while she swims in the depths of the sea and in the boundless waters, she longs for the life and happiness that exist on land. She thinks of the human world and her sighs are endless. As a sign of this, anyone who looks into the beautiful face of this mermaid will see a shadow of sadness and sorrow." After the stranger finished his tale of the mermaid, the prince asked, "How did you hear of me that you came all the way from distant lands to Nanking?" "Recently, when I was in the port of Macau, a merchant who is an acquaintance of mine first told me about you. If I had known about you earlier, you could have seen my mermaid much sooner. I have had this rare commodity in my possession for about 6 months, and during this time, I have traveled to various countries in Asia and visited all the famous ports. But nowhere could I find a merchant or nobleman who wanted to buy her. Some said that the price was too high and backed out, because the price of a mermaid is 70 Arabian diamonds, 80 Cochin rubies, 90 Annam peacocks, and 100 black elephant tusks, and it cannot be sold for less. Others were terrified of the mermaid's love and gave up, because since ancient times, no one has fallen in love with a mermaid and survived. They all fell prey to the mysterious allure of her beauty and lost both body and soul, vanishing from this world like ghosts. No one knows where they went or what became of them. Because of this, those who are attached to their money and their lives cannot become the owners of my merchandise. Although I have a rare commodity, I could not find anyone to trade with, and I have been continuing this arduous journey for a long time. If I had not heard about you from that merchant in Macau, I might have lost my valuable commodity. That merchant told me that no one but the prince in Nanking would buy your merchandise. He has fabulous wealth and is young, but he is frustrated that he cannot enjoy it. He is tired of the pleasures and glitter of the world and is looking for a dreamlike beauty. He is the one who will buy your mermaid. What that merchant told you is true. I am the same person you heard about in Macau. Just as you were looking for me, I was looking for you. Just as you believe me, I believe you too without even examining the goods. I'll buy the mermaid right now for the price you've quoted." The prince's words came out involuntarily from the depths of his being before he even had a chance to fully comprehend their meaning. In the blink of an eye, the requested diamonds, rubies, peacocks, and ivory were brought from 5 treasuries to the front garden of the hall and piled up on the stone steps. Without being surprised by the prince's wealth, the stranger calmly checked the number of treasures, then pulled the cloth off the cart and revealed the mermaid, strangely bound in chains. The mermaid, imprisoned in a beautiful glass aquarium and dragging her scaly lower body like a snake against the glass wall, suddenly seemed ashamed to be exposed to light and human gaze. She bowed her head onto her chest and, with her hands clasped around her waist, cowered and curled up. The aquarium was filled with clear, jewel-like seawater, and with each sigh the mermaid took, countless bubbles rose to the surface like crystalline pearls. When several servants lifted the aquarium from the cart to place it on the floor of the hall, the light from dozens of candles illuminated the mermaid's naked body, and her smooth, flawless skin shone like a flame. Until today, I was proud of my knowledge, my sight, and what I had heard. There was nothing on earth, no matter how rare, that I was unaware of. But I could never have dreamed that such a beautiful creature lived in the depths of the sea. Even in the realm of dreams, when I was immersed in the haze of opium, there was no imaginary creature that could compare to this mermaid in beauty and allure. If the price were twice as much, I'm sure I wouldn't have hesitated to buy her. After a long time, the excitement and joy he had longed for finally filled him. He had finally been able to find new life with the ultimate pleasure and happiness. He was no longer the man who had spent days and months in such apathy and boredom. He had regained the enthusiasm and energy that gives one the strength to move forward in life. I thought that being born human in this world was the best possible fate. But if there is a mysterious world in the depths of the ocean where such extraordinary creatures live, I would prefer to fall from the rank of human to that of a mermaid. I would love to wrap that magnificent scaly silk around my waist and make love forever with such a beautiful mermaid, compared to the cold eyes of this beauty, her ink-black hair, and her snow-white skin. The 7 concubines who have always surrounded me are so ugly and insignificant. How ordinary and stale their expressions are. Prince, you have understood the value and worth of the mermaid far more than I expected. Thanks to you, I have earned a sufficient reward and become a man of fabulous wealth overnight. In exchange for the mermaid I sold, I have loaded these treasures of the East onto my cart and want to return to the docks of Canton and board a steamship to return to my homeland in the distant West. There are many people who value these treasures as much as you do the mermaid. My last request is that you do not deny me a farewell kiss from the mermaid." The stranger bent over the surface of the aquarium, and the mermaid, who resembled a mass of mercury dancing in the water, brought her upper body to the surface. She wrapped her arms around the stranger's neck, pressed her cheek against his, and wept. From the tears that flowed from her eyelashes and dripped one by one, a scent like musk rose and filled the hall. "Do you regret selling the mermaid? Don't you feel sorry for selling her to me for that amount? Why do the people of your land value these treasures more than a mermaid? Why don't you take this mermaid with you to your country?" Yes, I understand why you think that way, but in the Western lands, mermaids are not so rare or unusual. My country is in Northern Europe, and its name is Holland. Since childhood, I have heard that mermaids live in the Rhine River, near the city where I was born. Sometimes some of them have a lower body like a human or bird-like legs, and they appear from the depths of the Mediterranean or from mountains, forests, springs, and swamps onto the land and ensnare people in love. The poets and painters of my land have always sung of their magic and depicted their forms, and they have taught us how seductive and beautiful a mermaid's smile is. Moreover, in my land, there are many women who, although they cannot compare to a mermaid, have learned the art of seduction and beauty from her, and have skin as white as snow, eyes as blue as the sea, and a proportionate figure like a mermaid. If you have any doubts about this, look at my own face and skin color, Prince. I didn't know that the West was so respectable and beautiful. If the men of your land have such cultured faces, and if the women of your land have skin as white as a mermaid, then Europe must be a pure and beautiful paradise. Take me with you to your land along with this mermaid. Introduce us to your cultured race there. Instead of ending my life as the Prince of Nanking, I would rather accept death as an insignificant person in your land. Grant me this request and take me aboard your ship as well." The stranger smiled worriedly and interrupted the prince, saying, No, I want you to stay in Nanking and love this unfortunate mermaid as deeply and as long as possible. Although the people of Europe have beautiful skin and faces, they probably cannot satisfy you more than the mermaid in this aquarium. This mermaid possesses the magic of all the ideal women of Europe and is the embodiment of all their perfection. You can see the essence of European poetry and painting right here through the beauty of this creature. This is the same mermaid who has aroused your senses and intoxicated your soul with her European body. She is the pinnacle of beauty. Even if you go to her own land, you will not find a more beautiful creature. A thought preoccupied the stranger's mind at this moment, as a shadow of sadness fell upon his face, and he changed the subject in a somber tone. "I pray for your long life and happiness. I know very well that you have already fallen in love with her. I pray that you will prove the falsehood of the legend of my land, which says that those who enjoy the love of a mermaid meet their end early, and that you will break its spell. I don't intend to take your precious life in exchange for the mermaid. If I ever set foot on the Asian continent again, and if I have the honor of meeting you again, I will invite you to come with me, but, alas, my anxiety about your fate compels me to pity you." The stranger uttered these words, bowed again, and paid his respects. Having received a mountain of treasures in exchange for the mermaid, he loaded them onto his cart, which he still pulled with his donkey, and disappeared into the shadow of the garden. The prince's mansion had been plunged into silence since the purchase of the mermaid. Not even one person among them had been able to enter the inner room where the aquarium was located and approach the mermaid. The only person who approached the mermaid was the master of the mansion himself, the prince. A glass wall was the boundary that separated them, with the mermaid on one side, a lump in her throat preventing her from breathing, and on the other side, a man outside the water lamenting his inability. All day long, without saying a word, one sighed about her fate, unable to leave the water, and the other resented his inability to live in water, and both spent their time in sorrow and depression. Sometimes the prince would sadly circle the glass walls and beg the mermaid to at least bring her upper body and skin out of the water and show herself. But the closer the prince came to her, the more the mermaid cowered and, as if afraid of something, retreated into the depths of the water. One night, the prince, overwhelmed with sorrow, poured Shaoxing wine into his jade cup and took pleasure in the flow of the powerful liquid that burned its way through his body. When the mermaid, who until then had been cowering in the corner of the aquarium like a sea cucumber, seemed to be tickled by the scent of the warm wine and came to the surface, reaching her hands out of the aquarium. As soon as the prince brought the cup of wine he was holding towards her mouth, the mermaid, as if involuntarily and out of her mind, stuck out her red tongue and pressed her lips like a sea sponge against the rim of the cup and took a gulp of wine. "If you like wine so much, I'll pour you as much as you want. If powerful and burning wine flows through your veins, which live in the cold waters of the sea, I have no doubt that you will become more beautiful than you already are and develop more affection for humans. The Dutchman who sold you to me said that you have magical powers that humans do not possess. He said that you have demonic immortality. I want you to show me your magic. I want to touch your demonic immortality. If you really know extraordinary magic, please, for at least this one night, transform into a human form. If you really have feelings in your heart, please don't cry like this and listen to my love." As the prince said these words and leaned forward to meet her lips instead of the cup, the mermaid's eyes clouded over like a mirror fogged by breath, and she suddenly spoke up, "Oh prince, have pity on me. Forgive me. Thanks to the power of the wine you gave me, I have finally been able to speak the language of humans. My birthplace, as the Dutchman said, is the Mediterranean Sea in Europe. If you ever visit the West, you will undoubtedly see a land in southern Europe called Italy, which is the most beautiful of all beauties and has landscapes like paintings. Then, if you cross the Strait of Messina and pass by the port of Naples, there is a place around there where a family of mermaids like us has lived since ancient times. They say that in the past, when sailors navigated in those waters, the strange song of mermaids would echo in the air, without it being known where it came from, and would tempt them and draw them into the unknown depths of the sea. I, who had my own memorable home, was caught in a warm, spring current on the last days of the 4th month of the previous year, and was carried away by the current to the southern islands and got lost. Then, while resting under the shade of a coconut tree on the shore, I was unfortunately captured by a human who displayed my ashamed and embarrassed body in all the famous markets of Asian countries. O prince, have pity on me. Release me into the free and boundless sea as soon as possible. No matter how much magic I have, as long as I am imprisoned in this narrow aquarium, I can do nothing. Only my life and beauty are gradually declining. If you really want to see the magic of a mermaid, please return me to my beloved homeland."
If the southern European Sea is so dear to you, then you must have a lover there. Under the waves of the Mediterranean, there must be a handsome young man who is like you, a mermaid, waiting for you day and night and worrying. If it were otherwise, you would not hate me so much. There is no other reason why you would reject my love coldly and want to return to your homeland."
When the prince expressed the reason for his sorrow, the mermaid listened to him with her head bowed and eyes closed. But then she reached out and grasped the prince's shoulders firmly. "Oh, how can I hate such a respectable and extraordinary young man as you? How can I have such a heartless heart that I cannot feel love for you? If you want proof to be sure of my love, listen to the sound of my excitedly beating heart." The mermaid twisted her tail and leaned her back against the aquarium wall. But then, in the blink of an eye, she leaped upward like a released bow. As drops of water dripped from her long hair, she hung from the prince's neck like a monkey hanging from a tree. Where her skin touched the prince's neck, he had the strange sensation of ice being placed upon it, and a chill spread through his body, gradually numbing his neck. As the force of the mermaid who held him increased, the cold, as white as snow, penetrated deeper and deeper into the prince's bones, and his body, which had been heated by the Shaoxing wine, quickly became numb. When the prince felt that he could no longer withstand the cold and was about to freeze and die, the mermaid grabbed his wrist and placed his hand on her heart. "Although my body is as cold as a fish's, I have a warm heart like a human's. This is proof of my love for you." When the mermaid uttered these words, the prince felt a warmth in the palm of his hand like the flame of a fire burning in the snow. His fingertips, which were placed directly on the mermaid's left breast and caressed it, felt a heartbeat beneath her chest, and the blood that had dangerously stopped flowing in the prince's veins was revived and began to flow again. My heart is hot, and burning emotions boil within it, but my skin is completely covered in unpleasant coldness. That's why when I see a beautiful person, because of this unfortunate fate of being born a mermaid and because of the destiny that is written for me, I am forever deprived of the right to love that person. No matter how much I love you, with this cursed body that has fallen into the rank of fish in the sea, I can only go mad from the flames of my sorrows, become a slave to dreams and illusions, and feel regret. O Prince, please return me to my home in the ocean and free me from this shame. If I bury and hide myself in the depths of the cold, blue waters, I can forget this bitter fate and my sorrow. If you listen to my request, I will show you the power of my magic as a token of gratitude and a farewell gift. Yes, show me your magic. I will grant you any wish you have." When the prince was careless and uttered these words, the mermaid happily clapped her hands together, bowed several times, and said,
"O Prince, then I bid you farewell. After I use my magic and change my form, you will surely regret it. If you want to see the mermaid one more time, board a steamship bound for Europe, and when the ship crosses the equator on a night when the moon is beautifully visible in the sky, come up on the deck without anyone noticing and throw me into the sea. I will surely transform back into a mermaid in the sea, and thank you."
The mermaid said this, and in the blink of an eye, she became as transparent and colorless as a jellyfish, disappearing like ice melting into water. Only a small sea snake, 3 or 4 inches long, remained of her, its back shimmering in green and blue, swimming in the aquarium. Early in the spring of that same year, following the mermaid's advice, the prince went to the port of Hong Kong and boarded a steamship bound for England. When the ship had set sail from the port of Singapore, the prince went to the railing of the deck where there was no sign of anyone and took out a small glass jar containing the sea snake from his pocket and opened it. As if saddened by the separation, the snake wrapped itself around the prince's wrist 2 or 3 times and then slipped away from his fingers and slid into the sea, whose water was as smooth as oil. The snake advanced in the silvery waters, and after a while, it suddenly submerged underwater. 5 or 6 minutes passed. In the distance, in the middle of the ocean, as if a flying fish had jumped out, silvery water and foam splashed around, and a dreamlike creature emerged from the water with its body out of the water. The magical figure of the creature shone as if a constellation rabbit had fallen from the sky into the sea, and at the moment the prince turned his face towards it, more than half of the mermaid's body had already sunk into the water, and she, with her hands raised in the air, sighed deeply, and then, as water swirled around her, she submerged beneath the water. The ship, carrying the faint glimmer of hope that remained in the prince's heart, continued its journey towards the nostalgic and beloved Europe, towards the Mediterranean, the birthplace of the mermaid.